Hello, I am Madan Shah from Khali Estate. The history of Khali Estate begins from 1862 from when Lieutenant Colonel Patterson bought this property from the British government and he paid 101 rupees and 9 annas for 16 acres. Then 1874, Sir Henry Ramsay, who was the Commissioner of Kumaon, Uttarakhand is divided into two parts. Actually, the eastern part is known as Kumaon and the western part is known as Garhwal. So he was the Commissioner of Kumaon and the part of Garhwal also, based in Almora town, and he came to this place and named it Khali. We can assume that he must have come on a horseback and must have asked somebody from the village, what is the name of this place? They said Khai. And being an Englishman, he didn't know the meaning of that. Khali in Hindi means empty. So he named it Khali, and in all the official language, in all the official record, this is known as Khali Estate only. Sir Henry Ramsay bought this property in 1874, and he was the Commissioner of Kumaon, the eastern part of Uttarakhand state, and one of the most revered commissioners of this region. 1893, he went back to England. He was knighted for his services to this region, and he sold this property to Mr. Arthur Ross Wilson. Mr. Arthur Ross Wilson was an engineer in Rohilkhand Kumaon Railways, actually. Mr. Wilson was here from 1893 to 1923. Where in 1923, he passed away here only, and this property came to his daughter Eva Wilson and his son. 1929, Mahatma Gandhi had come to Kausani, and he had just come for 3-4 days, but he liked it so much that he stayed there for nearly 14 days, and he was writing a book on the Anasakti chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So the place where Mahatma was staying was converted into Anasakti ashram when we got our independence in 1947. But when Mahatma went from here, he wanted to have an ashram in this region, obviously for political reasons, because the freedom movement was going on, and they were all freedom fighters. They did not have any money. So he told his wishes to Sardar Patel, his associate, and who later became the first Home Minister of India. And Sardar Patel had a talk with Jamnalal Bajaj, who was an industrialist, and he gave money, and Khali Estate was bought by Gandhi Seva Sangh and a Gandhian institution in 1929, and an ashram was established here, and Gandhi named this ashram as Shail Ashram. Shail is a Sanskrit word meaning mountain. The trustees were Sardar Patel, Jamnalal Bajaj and Kishandas Jaju, another Gandhian leader, and they were all associated with the freedom movement, and the freedom movement of this region was being governed from this place. There used to be a school for small children. There used to be some khadi thing for the women folk of this area. But unfortunately, that ashram did not last long. The reason being, there were two reasons. Number one, that Almora was the nearest market for them. Even if they needed a small thing, they had to go all the way to Almora and to bring it either on foot or on horseback. And number two, if you look into the history of Indian freedom movement, till 1929, the Congress was just demanding autonomy. And in 1929, they passed the resolution for the total freedom. So the freedom movement became more intense, and all the top leaders of the Congress were jailed. So there became a kind of a vacuum at the top of the Congress leadership. So they could not sustain this property, and they sold this property in 1935 to Ranjit Pandit, husband of Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, sister of Pandit Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. Well, Nehru was put in nanny jail during that period, but his wife Kamla was suffering from tuberculosis, and she was admitted to Bhavali Sanatorium near Nainital. and she was in a serious condition. Later on, she was shifted to uh, Black Forest in Germany and then to Switzerland, where she ultimately died. So Nehru was shifted from Nani jail to Almora jail, and Nehru was a political prisoner, so he used to get parole quite often. So whenever he used to get time, he used to come and stay in this bungalow. I have two books with me. One is an autobiographical book of Vijayalakshmi Pandit titled The Scope of Happiness. And she has written a paragraph about their stay at Khali. While Bhai was in Almora jail, Ranjit was able to have an interview with him. From Almora, he went to neighboring Binsar, a little hill town famous for its view of the beautiful sunrises over the Nandadevi range of the Himalayas. On the way to Binsar, he saw an estate built by a former English commissioner. Now she is referring to Sir Henry Ramsay in the last century. This English country house, surrounded by a fruit orchard, was in a sad state of neglect and the property was for sale. Ranjit was much struck by the extravagant beauty of the setting and the potential of this estate called Khali. He decided to buy it and use it for family holidays as well as a recreation camp for Congress workers. He named it Ritu Samhar, the pageant of the seasons, after a lyric poem of the same name by Kalidasa, the classic Sanskrit poet of the 5th century after Christ. Ranjit loved Khali and spent whatever time he could spare from his political work in developing it into a working fruit orchard and a center for neighboring villages to bring their hand-spun woolen yarn for sale. He experimented with hens, bees and wheat, and when we went to Khali, we ate our own produce. For Bhai, too, this became a refuge in the very brief intervals he could get away from work or jail. He loved the mountains and the simple life of Khali, and his visits, infrequent though they were, gave him health and enjoyment. Nehru family not only had political links, but they were also interested in developing the culture of this region, or the Hindustani culture rather, what we call the dancing and all these things. And I have a reference about Uday Shankar Cultural Center, which was opened by Uday Shankar in Almora town actually. It was near Khali that Uday Shankar, the well-known dancer, decided to build a dance academy. Up to that time, dancing was still an unacceptable art for good family. Uday Shankar wanted to break down this thinking and received encouragement from Bhai, who admired his dancing. The trouble arose when he tried to acquire a piece of land for his academy. The Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Pantji, that was Govind Ballabh Pant, was a most conservative man and did not approve of a school of dance for the girls of good family. Good family is in inverted commas. I was able to play a small part in persuading him to let Uday Shankar have a land and build on it. The Uday Shankar Cultural Center was not far from Khali, and Tara and Rita, their daughters, were among the first pupils enrolled in this summer course. The center flourished and gave an opportunity to many boys and girls to break tradition and enjoy the varied cultural facilities offered. Then came 1947, we got our independence, Nehru became the Prime Minister of this country, and Mrs. Vijayalakshmi Pandit went to Moscow as the first Indian ambassador to USSR. Ranjit Pandit, of course, her husband had died in 1942. So they lost interest in this property, and in 1953 they sold this property to one Bhaskar Swami from Gujarat. And he started an ashram, a spiritual center rather, at this place called Yog Shikhar. But somehow he couldn't manage this property and ran into some financial crisis. In 1959, he sold this property to one to Navneet Bhai Parekh. He used to say, I have three passions: Himalayas, classical music, and Sanskrit. If you go to our library, you will find one almirah full of Sanskrit books. He was a Sanskrit scholar. He used to play sitar, and of course vocal classical music, also Hindustani classical music. And he had been to Himalayas right from Kashmir. Kashmir down south is Himachal, then eastward is Uttaranchal, then Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, and Arunachal Pradesh, the easternmost state of India. He had been to many places in the Himalayas, and he went to Kailash Mansarovar in 1953 when there were no roads beyond Almora, and it took him 3 months from Almora to Kailash Mansarovar and back to Almora. So you can do only these things only when you have a passion for something. When Navneet Bhai bought this property, there were not many trees in this estate. Some of the trees are very, very old, but most of the trees are only 40, 50 years old. It was all planted by Navneet Bhai, and I wanted to make it a green island. And he has been quite successful. As you can see, these trees and the library are the greatest asset which Navneet Bhai has left for us. The stage was converted into a resort in 1988, and this is the first cottage built by Navneet Bhai. Actually, it was made of all woods, actually wood, but later on the wood decayed, and so we had to rebuild it with stones, and everything has been woven around this cottage actually. So we have 7 double-story cottage and a single-story cottage, just 15 rooms, all facing Himalayas. The interior is built such that you can see Himalayas right from your bed. Ma Anandmai, the famous saint, had stayed in this cottage in 1965, and he had the vision of Lord Shiva, and that is how the temple came about, which is in the parking area. So we have kept it like a single story only. We didn't build a double story because we still maintain that her powers, her Shakti, which you call that in Sanskrit, still is there. When we started this resort, we were aware that it would put strain on the environment. So we have taken care of that also, and we are one of the foremost leading rainwater harvesters in this state, Uttarakhand state. We have our own kitchen garden where we produce vegetables. Besides, we have a few cows also, which can cater to our dairy needs of daily kind. And well, Mr. Ramsay, when he came here, it used to be an empty place. Khali in Hindi means empty. But now you can find that there are a lot of activities, lots of guests, lots of friendship, lots of joys. So we have been able to transform it into this type of thing. For the final verse, here is Mr. Pandey, the owner of this place.
मैं खाली स्टेट में पिछले 40 साल से रह रहा हूँ और मैंने यहाँ काफ़ी एंजॉय किया। प्लीज़ मैं आपको यहाँ आने के लिए वेलकम करता हूँ और मेरे साथ और मेरी फैमिली के साथ एंजॉय कीजिए।